Shalom.
Welcome to Hebrew Shebrew as we study the Torah portion through the lens of relationships. So as we are on this journey and looking at the scriptures through the lens, just reminding you that it is all sorts of relationships with our fellow human beings. So when it comes to husband and wife, being single, your kids, your family members, every person that you have engagement with, that is what we are looking at. So let's dig in.
Yeah, it's going to be the Torah portion called Naso, that basically means lift up or take, and it's found in Bamidbar or Numbers, chapter 4, verse 21 through the end of chapter 7. So the first place that we're going to look at in chapter 4 is going to be verses 24 through 28, also 31 through 33. You want to read 4:24 through 28?
Sure. 4:24 through 28. This is the service of the families of the Gershonites in serving and in caring. They shall carry the curtains of the tabernacles and the tent of meeting with its covering, and the covering of porcine skin that is on top of it, and the screen for the doorway of the tent of meeting, and the hangings of the court, and the screen for the doorway of the gate of the court, which is around the tabernacle and the altar, and their cords and all the equipment for their service, and all that is to be done they shall perform. All the service of the sons of the Gershonites and all their loads and in all their work shall be performed at the command of Aaron and his sons, and you shall assign to them as a duty all their loads. This is the service of the families of the sons of the Gershonites in the tent of meeting, and their duty shall be under the direction of Itamar, the sons of Aaron, the priest.
And then going on, it talks about the sons of Merari. In verse 31 through 33, it says, "This is the duty of their burden, according to all their service for the tents of appointment, the boards of the dwelling place, and its bars, and its columns, and its sockets, and the columns around the courtyard with their sockets, and their pegs and their cords with all their equipment, and all their service, and assign to each by name the equipment of the duty of their burden. This is the service of the clans of the sons of Merari, as all their service for the tent of appointment, under the hand of Ithamar, son of Aharon the priest." So in these portions, right here in the beginning of this Torah portion, the clans of Gershon and Merari are given their role and their function, just like the clan of Kohath was in the prior portion. The supervisor for the clans of Gershon and Merari was Ithamar, the son of Aaron, just as the clan of Kohath was supervised by Eleazar, the son of Aaron. So Eleazar and Ithamar, they would both appoint or assign each by name. It says that in verse 32. So each man had a duty or service. Every Levite had a specific role and function, and they were assigned and supervised by a priest who were the leaders of the tabernacle. We discussed in our last video the need for knowing your role and your function, both in the marriage, in the family, as well as in your faith community or congregation. But it bears repeating that for these relationships to flourish and grow, it's necessary for each person to recognize, to accept, and then to function in their role. And this would include refraining from carrying out other people's function and overstepping our bounds. So it's something we already talked about, but it's definitely continuing to be talked about. And the only way to really, first you have to recognize, like, okay, I know this is my role, so you know what it is. And then you have to accept it. You have to come to terms with it. Like, this is what the master has chosen for me to do. I accept it. And then you not only have to recognize and accept, but then you have to carry out the function. Yeah. And part of carrying out that function is focusing, having your focus on what you're supposed to do and not focusing on what other people are doing and even trying to go over in their lane and do their job.
Yeah, it's like when you look at applying for a job, you have the description of what your job is. And so that is your role. That is what you're supposed to go ahead and do. And then from there, it's a matter of, okay, am I stepping into my role and am I doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing? Or am I overstepping my bounds and going into a lane that I'm not supposed to be going into? When you look at your local community, a lot of places need people to greet people. They need people to go ahead and pick up the chairs or put the tables back or set the things up. So it's a matter of figuring out, okay, what is needed, So go to your leadership team, find out from the people around you and be like, okay, what can I go ahead and help with? When it comes to a conference or comes to going to a Sukkot, at the Sukkot we go to, they ask for volunteers all the time, and they're always looking for people to go ahead and help out in the different areas that are needed. So it's a matter of figuring out, okay, what is your role? Where are you supposed to be serving at in getting involved in doing that?
Yeah. And part of our problem, and Paul talks about this in places when his letters, is a lot of times we look for the more glamorous roles, and some of the other things we don't see as so glamorous or so important. He talks about the eye and the big toe, or what you remember this portion of scripture.
Yeah.
But if we can come to terms with the fact that every service that we do is for the master, and that means it's an important role.
Yeah.
So, accept it and flourish in it.
Exactly.
So that the whole body can then flourish and grow.
Yeah. Yep. That's true.
We're going to move into chapter 5, and we're going to read just verses 5 through 8.
5 through 8. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, when a man or woman commits any of the sins of mankind, acting unfaithfully against the Lord, and that person is guilty, then he shall confess his sins which has committed, and he shall make restitution in full for his wrong, and add to it 1/5 of it, and give it to him whom he has wronged. So it's a matter of, is that where I was 8 or read through 8?
Through 8.
Through 8, okay. But if the man has no relative to whom restitution may be made for the wrong, the restitution is made for the wrong must go to the Lord, for the priest besides the ram of atonement, by which atonement is made for him. So do you know how to ask for forgiveness? Do you know how to go to somebody and say, hey, I'm so sorry for such and such? Like, you should name what you did wrong. That's the proper way of asking for forgiveness. That's the way we should teach our kids in regards to, hey, I pushed you, I shouldn't have pushed you, or I bit you and I'm sorry for biting you. I mean, those are the things that happens with little kids. But you need to teach them those things in regards to what did they do wrong, and I'm sorry for doing this action. It's the same thing for us adults. When you go into a marriage or go into a relationship, or your elderly parents, what did you do wrong? I'm so sorry for disrespecting you. I'm so sorry for the way I reacted. I'm so sorry for, doing such and such. Will you please forgive me? And so it's a matter of learning to ask for forgiveness, but also learning to say, hey, I was wrong in this area. What can we do to make this right?
Definitely. I mean, key in this is in verse 7, they shall confess their sin. This is part of what we would call, and I think we've spoken on it before, of owning your stuff. The ability to own your stuff. As Sarah, just said, when a little kid, does something wrong, and they come up and they just say, I'm sorry. Well, okay, but what are you sorry for? Yeah. You need to own it so that you can fix it. And then after you fix it, you have to be able to move on from it. Yeah. And I mean, that includes, you recognize what you've done wrong. You clearly know that. You do whatever you can to fix it. Here we see that you have to make restitution to the person you've wronged. Yeah. Another important key aspect in this is not only have you wronged that person, but in wronging that person, you have wronged Adonai. Yeah. So not only you have two relationships to fix now, but you've recognized it, you've owned it, you fixed it, you've done what you have to do to make restitution. Now you have to move forward, make a plan of action to where I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. And I need help from Father, but also need to make a plan of action so that I don't get into this stuff again, don't repeat these actions again.
Correct. It reminds me of a story. We had some, throughout my entire life growing up, we had different people live with us at times who needed assistance. And we had two brothers that lived with us. And my brothers had the basement, and they had a room downstairs in the basement as well. And one of the days it was snowing outside, and one of the brothers was on his way to go to work. Well, instead of him undoing some of the snow on the back of his car, he decided to just back up. Well, he ended up hitting my car and ended up causing some damage to the vehicle. And so his restitution was to go ahead and pay me to go ahead and get the vehicle fixed. So sometimes from our sins and from our wrongdoings, you have to make that restitution. You have to make that correct thing right.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you might have to replace something because you broke it. You know, it's like when you go into an antique store and it says you break it, you buy it. It's the same thing. You know, if you break something that somebody had, you need to look at replacing that item.
Yeah. And I mean, we could talk at length about this. You know, it's a great thing to look into. I mean, sometimes it is a physical thing you can restore. Sometimes we're just dealing with feelings and hurt. And there's other ways that you have to go about fixing that brokenness. But the key is, you know, you do whatever you can. And most of the time that's asking the other person, what can I do?
Yeah.
I know I messed up.
Yeah.
I acknowledge I messed up. What can I do to restore this relationship? Because that's what I want, is to restore the relationship.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
We'll move on now to the rest of chapter 5 is about this fascinating ritual. So we're not going to read through all of it. We will read verses 11 through 15, and we'll also read verse 31.
11 through 15.
So 11 through 15.
Okay. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and say to them, If any man's wife goes astray, and is unfaithful to him, and a man has intercourse with her, and it is hidden from the eyes of her husband, and she is undetected, although she has defiled herself, and there is no witness against her, and she has not been caught in the act. If a spirit of jealousy comes over him, and he is jealous of his wife, when she has defiled herself, or if a spirit of jealousy comes over him, and he is jealous of his wife, when she has not defiled herself, the man shall then bring his wife to the priest, and shall bring as an offering for her 1/10 of an ephah or barley meal. He shall not pour oil on it, nor put frankincense on it, for it is a grain offering of jealousy, a grain offering of a memorial, a reminder of iniquity.
Okay, so definitely, like, this section continues all the way to verse 31. It talks about all the things you have to do, but this is the key thing we're going to talk about is why. Why are we doing all of this to begin with? Verse 14 says, a spirit of jealousy comes upon the man. The Hebrew is ruach kinah. And we just have to look at, why would this happen in a marital relationship for either the husband or the wife? Maybe some possible things are improper boundaries, excessive time away from home, maybe showing a lack of interest in the relationship. You know, there's lots of things that we could do to make suspicion arise.
Yeah, and it's a matter of making sure that you have those boundaries set up, you know. So if you are married, you need to set up those boundaries. You need to figure out, okay, what is allowed in our house? What is not allowed? You know, we have one where it's like, I'm not going to go out to lunch, you know, especially when I was working outside the home. You know, sometimes people in groups would go out to lunch together, and I'm not going to go out to lunch by myself with another guy. You know, that is not making a wise decision, because I don't want to put myself in an awkward position. I don't want to put the other person in an awkward position. And I don't want to hurt our marriage relationship, you know? So it's the same thing, even in regards to like texting with somebody. You know, you want to make sure that, you know, you have a texting good relationship at different times. If Mark and myself need to text somebody of the opposite sex about a situation or about something coming up or making plans, we'll include the other person in that text message just as accountability, because we don't want any person to think something different than what is really there, you know? So it's a matter of setting up those boundaries. It's not because I don't have faith, you know, or trust in Mark at all, and it's not like he doesn't have trust or faith in me either. It's a matter of putting up those boundaries, you know, within our marriage to make sure that nothing else comes into our marriage.
Yeah, it's a matter of setting up what I would call this safe zone.
Yeah.
You know, just to consider a safe zone, and while you're in there, you know, the suspicious activities are not going to be there. When you start nestling up against, you know, the outer rims of that safe zone, you know, it's not that you have any intention of violating the marriage, but that's when, you know, things could happen that could make the other person just pause and ponder and have to actually say, no, I trust them. Whereas if you don't nestle up against that boundary, there's no reason for them to ever have the thought of, no, I trust them, because you haven't done anything to make them have to go ahead and say in their mind, it's okay, I trust them.
Yeah.
It's staying away from those kind of things.
Yeah.
So that is what we would be advising there. Keep your relationship in the safe zone.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to set up those boundaries, you know, and make sure that you have those boundaries set up appropriately. And it's just good. Yeah. It's good.
The next thing we'll talk about, we'll move on to chapter 6. Chapter 6 is mainly about the Nazirite vow. Mm-hmm. Verses 1 through 13 really talks about all the things that the Nazirite would go ahead and do, what they would not do. What would happen if they would violate the vow by coming into contact with something that they shouldn't have come into contact with. So that's basically, it's just talking about some of the ins and outs of that vow. What we want to really look at is what was it intended to do? Mm-hmm. It's intended to devote yourself to Yah, to Adonai, for a set amount of time, with the exception of a few recorded examples of lifelong Nazirites, like some of the judges, Samson, Samuel, more than likely. There are some lifelong, but we don't really see very many examples of that. Usually the Nazirite vow was for a specific amount of time. Yeah. And an important thing we'll just mention in passing is we don't do those today because it does require a priesthood and a temple to be able to bring sacrifices to fulfill that vow. Since we don't have any of that, that's why we don't do it today, because there's no way to complete the vow. Yeah. But still, we can learn things about our relationships from the Nazirite vow. One thing is sometimes it's necessary to separate yourself from normal life in order to focus on a ministry or a service that Yah has given you to do. Mm-hmm. So there's plenty of examples, and we'll talk about them, of why you would do this. But just like the Nazirite vow, it's important to limit the amount of time that you're going to do this in order to ensure that your relationships or your potential for a relationship doesn't suffer from being starved for affection. Mm-hmm. Because if you go ahead and separate yourself completely under this other thing and you pay no attention to your other relationships, then those relationships are going to stagnate and they're not going to grow and flourish. Yeah. And once you actually complete the time limit of the vow, like, okay, I'm going to focus on this thing for the set amount of time, then when it's completed, you need to shift your focus back to your relationships, and that includes self-care. Mm-hmm. So let's not forget about the relationship that we have with ourselves to be able to make sure that we are at optimal performance to be able to have good relationships with other people.
Correct. I know some people who, got divorced with having young kids, with having some children at home still. And they decided to go ahead and wait until the kids were a certain age before they started to go ahead and date. Maybe they would go on 1 or 2 dates, but it's not like their focus was on meeting a spouse to be able to have another parent for their child. They decided to go ahead and focus just on their kids and just that relationship for the time being until their children were a little bit older, and then started to look into dating and meeting somebody, and then setting up those boundaries, because kids can easily get attached to somebody and you don't want people coming in and out of their life. Yeah. That's just really hard on them. We see that with foster kids, going through this foster class. And so you want to have consistency when you have children. And so having somebody come in and out of your life is definitely rough on them. And so sometimes you have a season of your life of, okay, this is my season, or maybe you're in a transition of jobs where it's like, okay, I need to have a stable job for 6 months before I start looking for a spouse. I need to make sure that I have a house and have some savings, especially for the men, especially if you're wanting a wife who stays home with kids. You want to make sure that you have a stable home. You want to make sure that you have things set up so it's not so stressful when she does come into your life, and vice versa. Ladies, you might want to work on certain things for yourself. My mom wanted to make sure I knew how to cook, because I did not enjoy cooking when I was younger. I didn't.
And I am very grateful to her mother for that. She is a wonderful cook.
But it's like I learned 5 basic meals to be able to go ahead and cook. So when we have company over, I can cook. Now, I've expanded that, but that is something that you have to devote yourself to. And so sometimes you have a season of that time frame and a focus of what that is. And that's okay to have that focus. Again, it's just a season. A season lasts for a couple months, maybe a couple years.
Yeah, it's very important, as you were just talking about. Sometimes it's a season of growth and development of yourself.
Yeah.
You ended another relationship, and as you reflected on that relationship, you can actually see some things that were lacking in what you were bringing to the relationship. So you take a set amount of time to work on yourself.
Yeah.
And to develop yourself so that, when you come into the next relationship, you're going to be bringing a better version of you to that relationship.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's okay to work on yourself. It's okay to go ahead and get the healing that you need to go ahead and have, get the therapy that needs to happen, because we all need it. We do. We all need it at different parts of our life, and that's okay.
Definitely. We'll wrap up in the end of chapter 6 here, and we'll read the last few verses, 22 through 27.
Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and to his sons, saying, Thus you shall bless the sons of Israel. You shall say to them, The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. So they shall invoke my name on the sons of Israel, and I then will bless them. So how are you praying?
Yeah, this is basically this thing called the Aharonic blessing or benediction. Yeah. It's the vehicle to having Yah's name, his character, his reputation, his authority, having his name put on the people of Israel so that Yah himself blesses them. Yeah. And this is specifically done by the priest, although there is no command anywhere that says that no one else can do it, but this is how the priests are to do it. Yeah. So what can we learn from this and apply to our relationships? And as Sarah was just talking about, it relates very specifically to prayer and speaking blessings, over people in your life. Yeah. Who speaks blessing over you? Does your spouse, will your future spouse speak blessing over you? Will they pray over you? Yeah. Who do you speak blessing over? Do you speak blessing over a spouse or your children or your friends, your community? When do you speak these blessings? When do you pray? Yeah. Or have them spoken over you? Is this on a daily basis, a weekly basis, monthly, at festival celebrations? Important question to ask is, when would you want to have these blessings spoken over you? So that when you're looking at a potential spouse, you actually know, I'm looking for someone who's willing to speak blessings over me daily. Yeah. Maybe more than daily, maybe twice daily. How often do you want that to happen? Yeah. Do you want someone that is going to do it sporadically, or someone who's going to do it consistently?
Exactly. It's a matter of having those conversations. And if you are married now, sit down with your spouse and be like, guess what? I would like to pray, and ladies, if he's not doing it, you do it. It's okay for you to go ahead and grab his hand and be like, honey, can we pray? Can we go ahead and pray right now, or before going to bed? Takes 2 seconds to go ahead and do that and make it a habit and start doing it on a regular basis. You can do it with your kids while you tuck them into bed, or while they wake up, go in there praying over them while they wake up. It starts your day completely different when you're able to go ahead and do that versus just getting up and going about your day or going to sleep without praying. It starts one little piece at a time, one little baby step at a time in doing that. And if you are single, start praying. Start doing it now for yourself. Start praying this blessing over yourself, and also pray for your future spouse, because maybe they're going through a rough time right now and they're needing extra prayer. That's good to go ahead and do too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So make sure that this is a big part of your life, because we spoke about, I believe, in the last video or one of the ones, before that, having the blessings, having the word spoken over you, as Paul mentions in, I believe it's Ephesians 5, about being washed with the water of the word.
Yeah.
And I believe, yes, it's the one that we did about the unclean verbal discharges.
Yes.
That's how you get clean. So, I mean, we all, get stained and soiled on a daily basis from living in this world that we're in. So we need to get washed. We need to get clean. And you want somebody who is desiring to wash you.
Yeah.
And that's, it does say in Paul's letter that the husband does this, but I personally do believe this is a two-way thing. Like the husband gets dirty too.
Yes.
So the husband needs, the word spoken over them to get cleansed as well. Blessings, prayer, and the word spoken over them. Make sure that you're going to get that going on, because that's another way to make sure that you're growing and flourishing together.
Yeah. Yep. That's true. That's good.
So, I mean, we've talked about quite a few things in this Torah portion called Naso. We've talked about maintaining and flourishing in our relationships. We reviewed, the importance of recognizing and accepting and functioning in your role as a spouse, your role as a parent, as a friend, as part of the local congregation. We all have these multiple hats that we wear, and we have to recognize the role that we are in those situations, accept it and function in it, so that everybody can grow and flourish. When we do things that are wrong, when we do that, we have to own our stuff. We have to accept our part in it, do what we can to fix it, and then make a plan of action to move on. The ritual of the suspected adulteress, it pointed us toward going ahead and protecting and guarding our marital relationship by discussing activities. I mean, you and your potential spouse, your spouse need to discuss activities that would arouse suspicion and install those boundaries that will keep you in the safe zone.
Yeah.
We looked at the Nazarite vow and just discussed the seasons of our lives. And we need to know our season. We need to focus on our season and complete our season to ensure that our relationships can grow and flourish and receive the attention that they need to thrive. Finally, that Aharonic blessing, it pointed us to our need for spoken blessing, for spoken prayers, both our need to receive and give these blessings to our spouse, our family, our friends, our members of our community, and to always remember, and we may not have touched on this, but to always remember, because it says in that blessing, may the Lord bless you and keep you. So it's like always remember that the blessing or the prayer is asking Elohim to act and move on behalf of the person we're speaking over, or on behalf of ourselves when another person is blessing and speaking prayer over us. Yeah. So always remember, we're speaking a blessing, and the one who actually performs the blessing is the master. So we hope you've enjoyed studying this portion of Scripture with us, and we'll continue to find Elohim's relationship wisdom in the words He's given to us, His people, Yisrael.
Exactly. So make sure you like and subscribe so you're able to get notified when we have new videos. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, and then of course our Shebrew website as well. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and we will see you later. Bye.
Bye. Shalom.